St. Petersburg isn't just a setting in crime and punishment, it's a pulsating, breathing character, reflecting and refracting Raskolnikov's tormented soul. Its labyrinthine alleys, murmuring taverns, and fading facades serve as the canvas upon which Raskolnikov's fracturing psyche is painted. With each step Raskolnikov takes, the city's sprawling expanse seems to echo his growing desolation. Its vast, looming structures and the undercurrents of its grimy streets manifest his deepening sense of alienation. Yet, Dostoevsky ensures the city isn't painted in monochrome hues of despair. Amidst the urban decay, beams of hope pierce through. Unexpected acts of kindness, fleeting moments of shared humanity, and pockets of resistance against the encroaching darkness. Dostoevsky artfully implies that within the city's vastness, much like within Raskolnikov, there's a hidden reservoir of redemption, waiting to be unearthed. The silhouettes in the city's twilight hint at Raskolnikov's suppressed moral compass, shimmering in the dusk of his conscience. In this vibrant tapestry of St. Petersburg, Dostoevsky masterfully weaves contrasts of desolation and redemption, detachment and connection. Both the city and Raskolnikov emerge not just as symbols, but as intricate embodiments of the human soul's eternal dance between shadow and light. Luzhin ponders over his strained interaction with Dunya and Pulcheria, revealing his disdain for his liberal roommate Lebeziatnikov and their contrasting views on social issues, including Sonya's profession. Luzhin and Lebeziatnikov engage in a heated debate about modern societal values, especially concerning women's equality and Sonya's status, highlighting their philosophical and moral differences. Sonya, invited by Luzhin under a pretense of condolence, becomes a pawn in Luzhin's manipulative gesture of giving money, meant to demean her and showcase his superficial benevolence. Luzhin's offer of financial assistance to Sonya, framed as an act of kindness, is laced with his underlying intentions to assert control and impose his views, contrasting with Lebeziatnikov's idealistic yet naive beliefs. The chapter concludes with a glimpse into Lebeziatnikov's utopian vision of a society based on free love and communal living, showcasing his radical departure from traditional values, which Luzhin mocks despite his own moral shortcomings. Luzhin's reflections reveal a man adrift, clinging to the last vestiges of a world fading into twilight. His distaste for Lebeziatnikov's progressive views exposes the anguish of watching new values eclipse old certainties, and the difficulty of reconciling transforming ideals with ossified beliefs. We sense his struggle to navigate an unrecognizable society leaving him behind. The heated exchange between Luzhin and Lebeziatnikov tears open the philosophical fissures fracturing society, underscoring the simmering tensions between tradition and modernity. Their ideological clash illuminates the pain of understanding yet failing to empathize, exposing the chasm of incomprehension, dividing those unable to bridge differences. Their debate encapsulates the tragedy of polarized perspectives. Luzhin's feigned benevolence poignantly spotlights the cruelty of exploiting the vulnerable under pretensions of charity. His scheming reveals the anguish of watching helplessness manipulated by the powerful, morality reduced to a tool of control. This facade of sympathy exposes the depths of indignity the downtrodden must endure, eliciting acute discomfort at such inhuman treatment. Luzhin's calculated generosity starkly exposes the complex duality of charity, well-meaning on the surface, yet often laced with darker motives underneath. His behavior encapsulates the distressing irony of compassion commodified and weaponized, illuminating the intricacies of power dynamics that subvert even noble intentions. We cannot help but recoil at benevolence distorted into a means of control. Lebeziatnikov's starry-eyed vision sharply contrasts with Luzhin's scornful pragmatism, underscoring two paths diverged in the societal woods, aspiring towards communal harmony or descending into selfish gain. This clash amplifies the angst of reconciling humanity's conscience with its capacity for cruelty, making the novel's explorations resonate more profoundly within our conflicted souls. Katerina Ivanovna exhausts nearly half her funds on a memorial feast for Marmeladov, reflecting her struggle between poverty and the desire for dignity. The funeral meal is poorly attended, with only a few tenants showing up, underscoring Katerina Ivanovna's social isolation and the general apathy towards her family's suffering. Contrary to Katerina Ivanovna's hopes, Raskolnikov attends the meal, causing her to express misplaced optimism about his future contributions to her family. A fierce argument breaks out between Katerina Ivanovna and Amalia, their landlady, over respect, debts, and their contrasting values, escalating tensions. Luzhin enters amid the chaos, presenting an uncertain prospect for resolution or further complication, with Katerina Ivanovna eagerly approaching him for support. Katerina Ivanovna's extravagant commemorative feast epitomizes the excruciating inner discord of the impoverished, a desperate attempt to cling to vestiges of dignity while staring destitution in the face. This irrational yet poignant gesture hints at the daily anguish of reconciling her former social status with her harrowing present reality. Each lavish dish is both an act of defiance and a mark of her disconnect, underscoring how poverty distorts one's perspective. This scene lays bare the torment of reconciling pride and desolation. The absence of guests reflects the profound loneliness that engulfs Katerina Ivanovna. Surrounded by indifference and apathy, her voiceless suffering evokes the isolation of shouting into a void. Craving human connection, she grasps at any semblance of hope or recognition. This absence of community in her hour of need mirrors the societal neglect that engulfs the impoverished. Katerina Ivanovna's desperate play for dignity underscores the cruelty of indifference towards the vulnerable, and the depths of despair it evokes. Raskolnikov's attendance ignites a glimmer of hope in Katerina Ivanovna's despairing heart. Her misplaced faith in his support reveals the tragedy of misperceiving even the faintest prospect of relief as salvation. This poignant longing for an ally exposes the profundity of her isolation and the distorting lens of desperation. Her tenuous optimism is a moving testament to the human craving for connection amidst suffering. The altercation between Katerina Ivanovna and Amalia Ivanovna tears open the festering wound of fractured community and indifferent individuals. Their explosive clash illuminates the raw pain of seeking respect while facing scorn, of yearning for dignity while drowning in debt. Witnessing this breakdown elicits an ache, both for Katerina Ivanovna's plight and for a society that neglects its most vulnerable. This conflict underscores poverty's capacity to pit people clinging to life rafts against one another. Luzhin's arrival injects uncertainty into the swirling chaos, evoking the fragility of hopes balanced upon a knife's edge. His ambiguous presence symbolizes the precariousness of anticipating salvation amidst escalating crises. This uncertainty magnifies Katerina Ivanovna's isolation, underscoring how the impoverished are often left to navigate desolation alone. Luzhin epitomizes the callousness that permeates societies blind to human anguish. His entrance evokes dread rather than relief. In a moment of despair, Katerina Ivanovna begs Luzhin for protection against eviction, invoking her noble background and the memory of her deceased husband Marmeladov to assert her dignity amidst poverty. Luzhin shifts the focus from Katerina Ivanovna's plea to accusing Sonia of stealing 100 rubles from him, aiming to tarnish her reputation before an audience of tenants, thereby increasing the stakes and tension of the confrontation. The room falls into a stunned silence as Luzhin accuses Sonia of theft. The crowd's reaction ranges from disbelief to outrage, marking a pivotal moment of public shaming that threatens Sonia's fragile position in the community. Lebeziatnikov steps forward as an unexpected ally for Sonia, directly accusing Luzhin of framing her. His intervention begins to sway public opinion, challenging Luzhin's credibility and turning the tide of the confrontation. Raskolnikov exposes Luzhin's motive behind the accusation, linking it to a personal vendetta against him and his family. His analysis and revelations dismantle Luzhin's scheme, rallying support for Sonia and effectively discrediting Luzhin in the eyes of the assembled guests. Katerina Ivanovna's pleading words embody the anguish of the downtrodden, a cry for mercy in a storm of misfortune, anchored by the last vestiges of pride in a life crumbling to dust. Her invocation of nobility pierced with destitution encapsulates the human torment of reconciling honor and desolation, the all-consuming need for protection when the world abandons you. Luzhin's false indictment cuts through the crowd like a blade, the cruelty of his deceit matched only by the monstrosity of exploiting an innocent soul. His vile scheme weaponizes the flaws of human nature, fanning the flames of judgment and suspicion, threatening to reduce a vulnerable girl to ashes through the power of insinuation. The stunned silence shrouding the room grows heavy as all stand at the crossroads between complicity and conscience. In this charged moment, the tenants' response foreshadows a collective destiny, either passive witnesses to injustice or defenders of the defenseless. Their reactions mirror societies balancing on the knife's edge between humanity and indifference. Lebeziatnikov's resolute stand illuminates the power of truth in combating villainy. His lone voice slices through silent assent, kindling the dormant ember of justice and fanning it into flames of righteous resistance. With his intervention, the gathering realizes that deceit relies on silence, but truth needs only one voice. Raskolnikov transforms from passive observer to active crusader, his revelations of Luzhin's vendetta marking his refusal to let dishonesty reign. His rational dismantling of deceit is a clarion call against complicity cloaked as prudence, challenging all to reflect on which values they ultimately uphold or abandon. Raskolnikov shows that combating evil requires not superhuman strength, but simply the courage to pierce its veil of lies with the light of truth. Raskolnikov, amid his own crisis, defends Sonia against Luzhin, seeking both a distraction from his turmoil and a way to express his complex feelings for her. He dreads the upcoming confession of his crime to Sonia, feeling both compelled and terrified by the prospect. Approaching Sonia's place, Raskolnikov battles fear and an overwhelming sense of powerlessness. Torn between the urge to confess and the fear of its consequences, he is driven by a deep sense of moral obligation, despite his uncertainty about Sonia's reaction. The meeting between Sonia and Raskolnikov is emotionally charged, with Sonia intuitively sensing his turmoil. As Raskolnikov vacillates over his confession, their dialogue reveals his struggle with guilt and his desperate search for justification and understanding. Raskolnikov confesses to Sonia, exposing his vulnerability and seeking redemption. Sonia's response is one of horror, compassion, and unwavering support, highlighting the depth of their emotional bond and her role as Raskolnikov's beacon of hope. Sonia advocates for Raskolnikov's public confession as a step towards atonement, underscoring her belief in redemption through suffering. Their exchange of crosses symbolizes their shared commitment to facing the consequences of his actions, setting the stage for the challenges ahead. Raskolnikov's impassioned defense of Sonia reveals the glimmer of humanity beneath his darkness, hinting at his suppressed empathy. Yet as he anticipates his confession to her, the burden of truth weighs down his soul, overwhelming him with fear and doubt. His inexorable sense of a moral imperative exposes his inner conflict between justifying his crimes and confronting his guilt. Raskolnikov's confession lays bare his tormented psyche and desperate yearning for absolution. Sonia reacts with compassion despite her horror, promising to share in his suffering. Her unwavering loyalty penetrates through Raskolnikov's isolation, offering hope of redemption. This raw outpouring of anguish and empathy deepens their bond, transcending judgment. Sonia pleads for public confession, convinced suffering will lead to Raskolnikov's spiritual renewal. He refuses, determined to avoid imprisonment and atone independently. Their stances epitomize the clash between conscience and pragmatism, social and personal redemption. The exchanged crosses signify Sonia's commitment to walk with him down whichever path he chooses. Lebeziatnikov's sudden arrival leaves the conversation poignantly unfinished. Raskolnikov's confession still awaiting resolution. The contrasts between Sonia's compassionate morality and the outside world's intrusions underscore the complexities of attaining absolution. With truth exposed but the future uncertain, Raskolnikov and Sonia's relationship remains suspended between damnation and deliverance. This intense emotional exchange marks a pivotal point in Raskolnikov's spiritual journey. His startling admission encapsulates the novel's themes of guilt, suffering, and the quest for meaning. Raskolnikov lays bare his anguished soul. Sonia responds with grace, yet redemption remains elusive. Their poignant interaction sparks hope on his razor's edge path between darkness and moral renewal. Lebeziatnikov interrupts Sonia and Raskolnikov's conversation with urgent news that Katerina Ivanovna, having been thrown out and possibly beaten, is causing a scene in public, claiming she will take her children to beg in the streets as a protest. Sonia, in panic, rushes out to help, followed by Raskolnikov and Lebeziatnikov. Katerina Ivanovna, in a frenzy, is found in the street attempting to make her children perform for money, insisting this is their only option left. Despite her deteriorating health, she orchestrates a pitiful performance, driven by a mix of despair and delusion about their noble status. A crowd gathers around Katerina Ivanovna and her children, mixed with curiosity, amusement, and pity. A policeman approaches to address the disturbance, indicating the public spectacle has crossed legal boundaries. Raskolnikov and others intervene to help, showcasing the societal divide and the public's varied reactions to poverty and mental illness. Amid her chaotic attempts to rally her children and argue with bystanders, Katerina Ivanovna collapses, leading to a rush to get medical help. Her condition quickly worsens, revealing the physical toll of her mental and emotional turmoil. Katerina Ivanovna dies after a final outburst, leaving Sonia and her siblings in despair. Svidrigailov, having overheard Raskolnikov's earlier confession to Sonia, offers financial support for Katerina Ivanovna's children, hinting at his own complex motives and further entwining his fate with Raskolnikov's. Lebeziatnikov's urgent news tears open the veil shielding Raskolnikov and Sonia, exposing them to the visceral despair unfolding outside. His interruption epitomizes how poverty violently collides with blithe indifference, forcing society to confront realities it gladly overlooks. Katerina Ivanovna's frenzied public act encapsulates the excruciating torment of reconciling pride and desolation. Her performance pits determination against reality in a poignant yet futile battle. She defiantly asserts their dignity despite the indifference of a crowd hungry for spectacle, not solutions. The crowd reacts with morbid curiosity, pity, and scorn as Katerina Ivanovna's dignity erodes before them. To these spectators, her family's trauma is entertainment, underscoring society's apathy towards the less fortunate. The public reaction ranges from concern to contempt, indifference to intervention, showcasing the social divides of compassion. Katerina Ivanovna's collapse as her body succumbs spotlights poverty's capacity to fracture both the physical form and psyche. Her deterioration externalizes the internal agony of reconciling desperation with delusions of nobility amidst societal neglect. In both mind and body, she reflects the slow violence inflicted by systemic injustice. In death, Katerina Ivanovna is finally granted the peace that eluded her in life. Her painful end epitomizes poverty's capacity to erode the defiant spirit, despite moments of fleeting dignity. The assistance offered too late spotlights the lack of support when it's needed most. Her demise leaves behind a legacy of devotion and a demand for societal conscience. Here, at the end of Part 5, it is time to explore Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, as illuminated by Yuri Korrigan's article found at bloggerskaramazov.com, which positions the novel as a roadmap to the human psyche. The article explores how the novel depicts techniques some use to avoid deep self-reflection, like obsession over ideology or placing one's will entirely in the hands of others. Through characters like Raskolnikov and Svidrigailov, Dostoevsky illustrates the psychological toll of suppressing the mysteries within. Dostoevsky believed our inner depths hold transcendent dimensions beyond individual psyches. Through suffering, we connect to spiritual energies larger than ourselves. While some are overwhelmed, others, like Sonia, encounter the divine amidst tribulation. The article posits personality formation as relinquishing selfhood for a grounded openness. Our inwardness culminates in annihilating that which resists expansion. Dostoevsky shows anguish arises from developing inward, but distracting ourselves impedes confronting life's deepest questions. By symbolizing inner terrain, Crime and Punishment offers models for pondering our own unconscious geography. Its vivid imagery speaks to generations seeking new ways of comprehending inner growth, temptation, and our mysterious relationship with forces beyond definition. In sum, the novel endures because through its psychological insights, Dostoevsky transforms inner turmoil from a private problem into a universal human experience. He presents a vision of realizing our greatest selves by embracing life's most unsettling realities within.